Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the Zone 7 Board of Directors for September 4th, 2024. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And please stand and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's interesting. I lost my regular, this didn't work.
Roll call.
So I'm going to have to go to a different agenda. Can you give me your agenda? So, sorry about that. Donna, can you do roll call?
Director Benson?
Here.
Director Brown? Here. Director Figures?
Here.
Director Green?
Here.
Director Narum?
Here.
Director Palmer?
Here.
President Gams?
Here. So next is public comment, and this is an opportunity for the public to comment on section provides this on opportunity to address the Board of Directors on items that are not listed on the agenda or informational items pertinent to the agency's business. The board will not be able to act on matters brought to its attention under this item until a future meeting. So, with that quick intro, we're ready for the main event of this special meeting, which is the PFAS management update. This is an informational item and a presentation by staff.
He did public comment.
Public comments. I went over that rather quickly.
He said it. He read it. And he
Yeah,
asked for
I read it, and
There is a
public
public.
comments on Zoom.
Mr. Public. I think so.
Okay. You're up, sir. Okay. Well, we're happy to see a big audience here, too. I got to say that. I did ask. Yeah.
Yes, we have a comment from Alan Burnham.
All right, Alan.
Thank you, directors of Zone 7. A month ago, I listened to the value proposition presented for the Los Vaqueros Reservoir, and I was underwhelmed. I think Director Palmer said something along the line, well, it makes Delta Conveyance look pretty good. Kind of reminded me of the Seinfeld episode of the Soup Nazis in terms of our ability to get what we want when we need it. But all that aside, that doesn't mean it's not a good thing to do. It's just that I think a much better case needs to be made. If we needed all of Sites Reservoir, Delta Conveyance, Los Vaqueros Reservoir, chain of lakes, and desalination, the relative costs are secondary. But Director Gams wanted some sort of a comparison, and I think the reply was something along the line that, well, it's too early for that. But it's very important. If a subset is needed to our need, we really need to know which is a subset which is the most cost effective. And it brings up the issue that Los Vaqueros Reservoir is really only valuable for short-term storage due to evaporation. And what is the predicted residence time in the reservoir given evaporative loss from modeling studies of wet and dry years, et cetera. And it also depends on the height of the slope of the wall of the reservoir, of course, as you know, and how does that compare to chain of lakes? Are we better off accelerating chain of lakes? And is there a problem with a chain of lakes and the exchange with contaminated groundwater? If so, can that be mitigated by grout curtains or some other mechanism? It seems to me that there really needs to be a more holistic consideration of the various options before spending a whole lot of money trying to decide what is needed. That concludes my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Burnham. Any more comments on Zoom?
There are none.
All right. Now we can go to the PFAS discussion. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. Tonight's workshop is to provide an overview of actions and strategies Zone 7 is using to address PFAS. We provided a similar workshop in fall of 2022, and after 2 years, we've made a lot of progress, and we thought it'd be a good idea to update the board and the community. Speakers tonight will provide quite a bit of information, but I wanted to start out by providing key messages from me, and that is that Zone 7 is delivering PFAS-safe drinking water, and our PFAS treatment is highly effective. We are currently running one PFAS treatment plant, and we'll have 2 more in the next few years, and as you will see, our PFAS treatment is highly effective. It allows us to fully utilize our core water supplies and deliver PFAS-safe drinking water. Without PFAS treatment, we would be faced with a combination of having to purchase expensive water supplies that are not readily available and probably also reduce reliability. So effective PFAS treatment means we can continue to deliver reliable and safe drinking water and to maximize the water supplies which are under our control. Tonight, you will hear from guests from the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board, as well as Water Resources Manager Ken Min. We expect the presentations will take about 45 minutes, and we ask that you hold questions until after the presentations. And then I might recommend that we take a break after that. Might be a long evening. I will introduce our guests from the regional board, but I want to emphasize up front that we have this great collaboration and partnership with them, and you will see that tonight. So I do appreciate their collaboration with us and being here tonight. So here are the people that are attending. Eileen White, who is Executive Officer, Ross Stinson, Assistant Executive Officer, Alec Noggle, the Toxics Cleanup Division Manager, and Kimberly West, their PFAS Program Manager. So with that, welcome, and I guess I'll turn it over to Eileen.
Great, thank you. We're happy to be here tonight. I want to say good evening to President Gam and members of the board. And like Valerie said, we really value our collaborative working relationship with Zone 7. In particular, our team that Valerie introduced works very closely with Ken Min and his team as Zone 7 continues to provide safe drinking water to their customers. Let me go on to the next. So I want to begin because I know we have a lot of members probably of the public participating remotely, and PFAS is becoming new in people's vocabulary in the last several years. It wasn't a term we talked about 10, 20 years ago, many people. So I wanted to start by giving a little background on PFAS. And per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, are a group of over 14,000 synthetic chemicals with similar chemical structures and unique physical properties. Namely, PFAS repel oil and water, they reduce friction, and they withstand high temperatures. These properties make them really useful in many ways, but also really hard to get rid of. And I want to distinguish tonight, there are 2 common PFAS compounds that are well studied, and I'll be talking about PFOA and PFOS. But what I want to do, you'll hear me say PFAS, and that's referring to a whole group of compounds, the entire class of compounds. So you'll hear me refer to PFAS when I'm referring to the whole class. So why do we care about PFAS? You probably read in the papers and seen in the news that PFAS are structurally stable, so they do not degrade in the environment. Hence, people call them the forever chemicals. Since the 1940s, they've been commonly used in consumer products and industrial processes. And PFAS are highly mobile in water. As a result of their use and mobility, PFAS are widely distributed in the environment throughout the world. And importantly, toxic studies show that some PFAS have serious effects on human and ecological health. You probably have heard about the increased risk of cancer from PFAS. Next, I'd like to take you through a timeline of PFAS. It's important to note that Zone 7 did not create PFAS, they inherited PFAS. And they're doing a great job managing and providing high quality drinking water that meets all state and federal regulations as they manage with the PFAS that they experience in their groundwater system. So a little background. Various PFAS compounds were first created by industrial chemists in the 1930s with the notable accidental creation of Teflon in a DuPont lab in New Jersey in 1938. PFAS were used mostly for military equipment and research until the 1950s when they started to be used in consumer products like Teflon cookware and Scotchgard. In the 60s, PFAS became a key ingredient in firefighting foams used to extinguish fuel fires, and that's when PFAS really began to spread. In the 70s, manufacturers started to improve all kinds of consumer products, unfortunately, by adding PFAS. In the 1980s, there started to be some scrutiny of Teflon manufacturers and concern over chemical releases, especially in Europe. In the 2000s, we really started to investigate PFAS distribution in our environment. PFAS can be found in all kinds of places that they shouldn't be, like polar bears in the Arctic, dragonflies in rural South Africa, and in our own blood. Concern about the recalcitrance and environmental mobility of PFAS led to the voluntary phase-out of PFOAs and PFOA in the U.S. manufacturing in the early 2000s. While at the same time, the same companies ramped up manufacturing of new PFAS compounds that would become regrettable substitutions. Now, in 2024, we are continuously learning more about the chemistry, fate and transport, and toxicology. We are beginning to regulate some PFAS compounds, and the public is becoming more aware of PFAS contamination and health effects through news reports, movies, and other media. So earlier this year, 2 important PFAS federal regulations were established. On April 10, 2024, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency issued maximum contaminant levels for 6 PFAS compounds, including PFOS and PFOA. Maximum contaminant levels are the maximum concentration of the contaminant allowed to be in drinking water in public water systems. The standards apply only to drinking water, but have positive implications for our ability to set cleanup standards for PFAS in groundwater. On April 19, 2024, the U.S. EPA designated PFOS and PFOA as CERCLA hazardous substances. The hazardous substance designation allows regulators to more easily track and regulate these PFAS compounds. We expect these regulations to encourage PFAS sampling during typical site investigations, which may in turn provide more information on the source of PFAS in our groundwater. As you can see, the information about PFAS has really been evolving in the last several years, and I want to commend Zone 7 for really being the leader in the strategic planning to manage the groundwater basin against PFAS. So as I've mentioned, PFAS are widely used in consumer products. You ask, what products are they in? Well, from obvious PFAS uses in products like water-resistant sealants and paint, stain-resistant carpets and upholstery, outdoor camping gear, nonstick cookware, to less obvious PFAS uses, like in dental floss, contact lenses, cosmetics, clothes, skis, cleaning products, firefighting foam, and electronics like our phones and computers. PFAS are prevalent in the products we use every day, which makes them challenging to manage. Because of the wide variety of commercial, industrial, and household sources, PFAS are everywhere in our environment. Complete elimination of PFAS sources is almost impossible until PFAS is totally removed from industrial processes. This slide shows the fate and transport of PFAS in the environment. This visual conceptual site model for an industrial facility illustrates various pathways by which PFAS can get into our soil, our groundwater, stormwater runoff, our air, our rivers and oceans, and even into our bodies. We are currently investigating to determine how much PFAS is detected in different places in our environment. So as you can see from the slide, Zone 7 didn't create the PFAS, they end up with them inadvertently into their drinking water supply. In this figure, the waterborne San Francisco Bay region is shown in orange, and the water droplets on the map show the approximate locations of supply wells in which PFAS have been detected in our region. At the regional board, we are prioritizing PFAS investigation efforts in areas where drinking water supply wells are impacted by PFAS. In coordination with the Division of Drinking Water and local drinking water agencies like Zone 7, we have identified public drinking water supply wells in our region that have been impacted by PFAS. Once we have identified the impacted supply wells, we look for potential source sites nearby that could be causing these impacts. It's important to note that water agencies like Zone 7 take measures to ensure that the water served to their customers does not exceed PFAS standards. They either take impacted wells offline, or they treat or blend the water from impacted supply wells to meet all water quality standards. And we want to acknowledge Zone 7 for taking great efforts and costs to design and implement treatment systems that remove PFAS from their drinking water. As you can see on the map, most of the PFAS impacted wells in our region are in highly urbanized areas like Livermore and Santa Clara valleys. Although PFAS may come from various residential sources, stormwater runoff, commercial and industrial sources, identifying and controlling PFAS from commercial and industrial sources can reduce the amount of PFAS that reaches our groundwater. So really we want to get to source protection of the groundwater so that agencies like Zone 7 doesn't have to treat it. That's the long-term vision. We are investigating about 100 potential PFAS source sites throughout the San Francisco Bay region, so Zone 7 is not alone. About 75 of those sites were identified in the statewide PFAS investigative orders that were issued by the State Water Board to airports, refineries, bulk fuel terminals, chrome platers, and landfills in our region. Along with managing the sites that receive the statewide orders, we have identified an additional 25 to 30 potential PFAS source sites at which we have identified and initiated PFAS investigations. Site investigations typically include testing soil and groundwater for PFAS. We have collected initial PFAS data, and the PFAS investigations are ongoing. This figure shows sites in our region in orange where PFAS data has been collected. The gray icons show the locations of airports, bulk fuel terminals, chrome platers, landfills, and other industrial sites with PFAS data. Our site management strategy entails 4 basic steps. We identify potential PFAS source sites. We collect the data. We prioritize sites for further investigation and cleanup. And then we focus on source cleanup and plumes that may reach water supply wells or aquatic habitats. And in particular, we like to work closely with the water agencies like Zone 7 to share information so we can be strategic in our work in cleaning up groundwater basins. While PFAS have unique properties that can make things even more complicated, PFAS may be toxic at lower levels than most contaminants migrate further in the environment, and we found out that PFAS can transform into other PFAS compounds and never fully degrade into non-toxic end products. So fate and transport analysis are complex. We are learning how to manage these challenges as our PFAS investigations proceed. And now talk a little bit about the Livermore Valley. Now that you realize you're not alone with dealing with PFAS, in the Livermore Valley, we're working with the fire departments, the airport, the wastewater treatment plants, military sites, and commercial and industrial sites to identify potential PFAS source sites. We are considering sites that are likely to have used, stored, or discharged PFAS in their current or historical operations. We are considering sites that are in proximity to drinking water supplies in which PFAS have been detected. The Regional Water Board's mission is to preserve, enhance, and restore the quality of San Francisco region's water resources and drinking water for the protection of the environment, public health, and all beneficial uses. We understand that groundwater is an important drinking water resource in the Livermore Valley. We understand that PFAS is a big issue. We are working to find and eliminate sources of PFAS and, quote, turn off the tap where possible to protect the groundwater basins. Luckily, we're not working on this issue alone. Since 2021, we have been coordinating with Zone 7 to share information on PFAS monitoring, investigations, and drinking water treatment. We know enough to know that there's a lot more that we need to learn, and there's a lot of work to do. We need more data to be able to make data-driven decisions. We are committed to investigating potential PFAS sources, and we value Zone 7's input and collaboration. We appreciate Zone 7's commitment to study and refine knowledge of the Livermore Valley groundwater basin. We support Zone 7's work to provide safe and sustainable water and to manage the groundwater basin as a groundwater sustainable agency under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. We understand the need for a diversified water supply portfolio with new water supply opportunities. And our interagency coordination is critical as we work toward understanding and managing PFAS issues in the Livermore Valley. We want to say that really Zone 7's a leader in their treatment of PFAS and really being proactive with their strategy before many other water agencies and trying to address PFAS before they actually got into the basin and trying to manage it through groundwater, through the treatment and through the blending options. And finally, in closing, we value our partnership with Zone 7 and work forward to continue to work with them as they try to achieve their mission of providing safe, high-quality, reliable water to their customers. And want to thank you for having us this evening.
Thank you. And I'm presuming you all will stay for the question session.
Yes, we are, and I brought my team to answer the tough questions.
All right.
Good evening, President Gam, Vice President Benson, and the directors. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you and to address and update PFAS management that has gone on the last 2 years. So as you know, Zone 7 actions are guided by our 5-year strategic plan goals and initiatives. Our PFAS management action support strategic goal A and C, and our actions are to implement initiative 1, 2, 7, and 8 as shown on this slides. So I presented our PFAS management strategy to the board back in August of 2022. Since then, we had completed multiple tasks, got better clarity on regulatory compliance needs, refined our strategy and plan for coming years. In parallel, during this time period, the public's awareness and interest in PFAS has increased significantly. So for that interest of the public, I plan to discuss PFAS-related issue by asking this question and more comprehensively. So some of the information you may already heard and learned, but please ride the journey with me so that we can inform the public more comprehensively. So these are the questions that I thought that any member of the public would like to know. How do we get here? Why does Zone 7 manage PFAS? What is our strategy? What have we done so far? And what are the key takeaways and what are the next steps? So I will address those different questions throughout the presentation. So first and foremost, how did we get here? Well, let's look at it. It started 2018 when the Division of Drinking Water established the PFAS notification level, P4 and PFOS. That's when that we started voluntarily sampling in 2018 December. Actual order came out to sample in 2019 second quarter. Again, Zone 7 is proactive, and we are way ahead of that schedule in sampling the PFAS. Then, as you all know, that we got hit by the drought, started for 2021, 22. So that time, the board directed staff to investigate the potential sources. So we launched site potential source investigation, commonly known as Jacob study, back in 2020, and followed that by conducting the mobilization study. What that is based on understanding of the PFAS sources, we did the computer modeling simulation to understand how that PFAS concentration would mobilize in our groundwater basin. We've done that. Once you understand where the PFAS potential sources are, how the PFAS mobilize in the groundwater basin, only then the staff, under the direction of general manager, developed the PFAS management strategy and presented to the board. Well, lo and behold, right after that, Division of Drinking Water issued PFHXS advisory levels. And we all know we have to put Stone Ridge well, one of our most productive well, out of service because it doesn't meet PFHXS requirement right off the bat. And we moved very quickly. We went to the board and requested authorization to develop the Stone Ridge PFAS facility, and we were able to put that facility in place from the day that we request your approval to the ribbon cutting is only 13 months. So we were able to move very quickly and develop this PFAS treatment facility. And following to that, as we said it in our strategy, we went ahead and put in the Sentinel wells in Ken Marshall Park and Pleasanton, which intended to give us a forewarning should PFAS concentration reach to that west part of that basin. We put that in 2024, it's become operational. And thereafter, at 2024 April, EPA issued maximum contaminant levels, and it is way lower than we anticipated, but I'm happy to report that our strategy still holds, and our strategy will be able to handle that maximum contaminant level. So follow up to that, we need to continue to implement our strategy. Part of the strategy is to diversify the water supply portfolio. So we collaborated on an ongoing basis with the City of Pleasanton to develop a project, or at least to investigate the feasibility of the projects collaboratively with City of Pleasanton in mid this year. While we are doing that, as you all know, we are currently constructing Chino Lake PFAS treatment facility that should come online sometime in early 2025, and we all may have the ribbon cutting ceremony if everything goes well. So that is where we have been. So let me touch on a state and federal levels regulatory action. So on April 10th, US EPA announced a final national primary drinking water regulations for 6 PFAS. With this regulation, EPA established a legally enforceable maximum contaminant level. I cannot emphasize enough, this MCL is for drinking water. And by 2027, monitoring has to take place within 3 years from that promulgation of the standards. And by 2027, agencies are required to provide public the information. By 2029, which is 5 years from this year, need to implement the solutions, and beginning of 2029, reduce the level to those MCL, or otherwise need to notify the public about this exceedance. So as you can notice, regulation become effective 5 years from now. We already have been. That's a testament of our values and how we proactively approach regulatory standards. With or without it, we do the right thing. So this is a formal official table listed in EPA regulatory publication. This showing basically the 6 compounds being regulated. And my point of showing you here is not to show you what the MCLs are, but I'd like to point out a couple of things in this table. One is the Janix chemical, which fortunately we don't have to deal with in this basin. And we are currently primarily dealing with the PFOS. That is the most prominent compound in our basin, and PFHXS in some area. The one thing I'd like to note to you is that EPA is going to regulate the multiple compounds under a category using the hazard index. So just like Executive Officer Eileen White pointed out, there are more than 14,000 PFAS compounds out there. We are currently regulated for 6. So how about 13,990 some remaining compounds? Very likely, EPA is not stopping. They continue to investigate, and they may be classifying and regulating them as a categorically as a hazard index. That's what we are hearing. So I'd like to put forewarning to all of us that having 6 compounds being regulated, we cannot rest assured that there will be no more. There will be more compounds may be regulated, and we have to be ready for future regulation as well. How about state level? California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, OHIA, adopted the public health goals. If you look at it, public health goals are 0.007 parts per trillion and for P4 and 1 parts per trillion for PFOS. Those are health goals. It doesn't mean the regulation. But they look into that level of details, and state has the authority to issue the MCL more stringent than federal. Cannot be, less stringent, more stringent than the federal level, not less stringent. But what I'm hearing is that state may adopt the federal standards as the state level. But we have to make sure that we are straight tracking on state level regulation as well. So those are regulatory environments, which is takeaway here is that regulators are continue to look into different compounds and continue to issue PFAS regulatory compliance needs down the line. So as a staff, we are being aware of those situations, and we are trying to be ready for that kind of additional regulation. The second question, why does Zone 7 manage PFAS? A picture say 1,000 words. I may even skip the whole segment with this one picture. So formally speaking, we do have a policy requirements and regulatory compliance need. We have to implement Zone 7 water supply reliability policy adopted by the board, as well as the water quality policy. Those policies require us to meet water supply needs at the high level. So for us to be able to meet water supply needs, we need to have this groundwater basin available to us. And we also have to meet water supply permit requirements, that is by Division of Drinking Water, and we have to comply with the MCLs and California Drinking Water Standard, although that yet to be promulgated. So I'd like to tell you more about our management objectives. So this is what I call a wheel of PFAS. It's not wheel of fortune. You can pick any consumer product you like, is there. So our objective is to support the mission of delivering safe, reliable, efficient, and sustainable water, to manage a local groundwater basin, to be resilient in multi-years drought, which I would touch on it in the following slides, show you exactly what I mean by this, and to meet or exceed federal and state drinking water standards, to sustainably manage the groundwater basin as a GSA, Groundwater Sustainability Agency, as per SGMA. So when I came before the board 2 years ago, I presented to you two-part strategy. First part is near-term strategy. We stipulated this strategy to deal with PFAS issue prior to issuance of MCLs. So back then, I said present to 2023. That is when that we were anticipating MCL to be out. In reality, MCL is off by about 5 months. They came out in 24. So in that short term, we are dealing with the Division of Drinking Water response level, which is 40 parts per trillion, 10 times as much as MCL today. So we present to the board that we will continue monitor. We're going to do the blending to meet the drinking water, the regulatory standards, and we will operate with a supply-driven operation. What that means is we will try to use between surface water and groundwater operationally to make sure that we meet all these PFAS requirements. And we will continue to plan to meet the future MCL. That's what we said. That has been implemented successfully. Now we're looking at long-term PFAS management strategy post-2023. So our strategy consists of 4 key integrated components. It starts with monitoring. Monitoring is a fundamental piece of the strategy to understand and track the groundwater quality. It is overlaid by blending and treating, so we continue to treat, we continue to blend as appropriate to meet the drinking water standard. And the next level would be managing the groundwater basin in such a way that to extent possible, we manage the groundwater basin for water quality. Finally, last component, important one, is diversifying groundwater sources to become more resilient. We cannot be complacent. We cannot assume that water supply will be available at our demand. We have to be ready by diversifying the portfolio. So that is our key management strategy for long term. And like I said earlier, I'm happy to report that this strategy still holds to manage the 4 parts per trillion MCL. So now I'm going to explain what we accomplished so far by component by component. So let me start with monitoring components. Monitoring is to track and manage groundwater quality. We expanded monitoring well network, as we said we would, from 67 wells in 2021 water year to 107 in 2023 water year. That is 50% increase. We installed Sentinel well in Camp Marshall Park to observe the Barnell Sub-Basin in 2023. And ongoing action goals, we are implementing PFAS monitoring program to track the PFAS concentration. We are sharing data with retailers and regulators to investigate the sources and making data available for public for transparency. It is really important to know that all the public concerns and interests, one of the reasons being that we are being transparent, we are having those data available. That's why public can consume and start thinking about those issues. So that's why we are sharing this information, whatever it is, if we are being factual about that. So talking about water quality monitoring, I don't expect you to look into all the little dots and what is said. I'd like to give you a perspective of how extensive our groundwater monitoring network is. We have a total of 259 wells. We are monitoring either semi-annually or annually. We cover the basin north to south, east to west. So as far as PFAS monitoring network goes, you will see the dots on the map. Those are our production wells. Different colors represent different well field. These are the monitoring wells situated within the main basin area. Of that, in 2021, those green dots are the ones that we monitor for PFAS. And when we get to 2023, we increase the PFAS management monitoring to another level. So now things are really interesting. And please remember the fact that we increased the monitoring. So what we are seeing here, image is showing that the footprint of PFOS concentration in upper aquifer units in 2021 and 2023. 2021, 2023. For 2021 data, please note, we plotted only the 10 parts per trillion. The outer bound, the lighter shade gradations represent 10, because that is when we are anticipating MCL to be around 10. But actual MCL is about 4. So if you look at 2023, we plotted 4 parts per trillion. You can notice enlarged footprint of PFOS compared to 2 years ago. You may also notice more elongated shape of concentration over 70 parts per trillion. I'd like to point out to you, for example, one spot near the 680 freeway in the west. Let me see. Oops. So you may not see my cursor, but let me see if I can. Oh, here you go. So I want to get your attention to this spot. This is 2021. You will see 70 parts per trillion and 40 parts per trillion. If you look at 2023, you will see 40 and 4. 70 is gone. If you look at the eastern part of it, you will see 70 parts per trillion and 40 parts per trillion and eastern part of the basin. If you look at 2023, that turned into 4. So what happened then? In the east, previous 70 parts per trillion spot become diluted to 4, and you may be asking why. So I'd like to offer you plausible explanation. In 2023, we increased monitoring by 50%. So the more we observe, the more we discover or detect the concentration. it is not changing, in my opinion, overnight or over the years. The more we monitor, we are hitting more spot, we are getting more information from the basin. In 2023, we met our demand by 95% of our demand with the imported surface water. We barely pumped less than 2,000 acre-foot of water in 2023, less than 5%, 95% surface water. So this footprint that you are seeing is less influenced by the pumping than other factors. What would that be? So there are two outstanding factors here. One is increased monitoring. Number one, we are detecting more. Number two, if you recall, in 2023, we have really wet hydrology. We got 100% allocation prior year. We are in the mode for recharge. We recharge the basin all the way to 99% full. Natural recharge and imported recharge. So that is telling us that the recharge definitely influenced the concentration more than we thought it would be. I like to argue that when you look at this change in geometry of the footprint, this doesn't meet classical definition of so-called plume. This phenomenon is totally different from classic description of plume. Commonly known plumes are chlorinated solvents such as PCE, TCE, and benzene. They are denser than water. So if they release into the ground, they tend to sink below the water table. They stick the soil, they tend to sink. They are really a blob of that concentration, that contaminant, and move very slowly because they are heavier than water. So then their solubility is really low. So it doesn't really solutable in the water that much. And they don't trouble. The dry cleaner site, industrial sites are common sources of those contaminants. And those are biodegradation is possible. PFAS is otherwise. On the other end of the spectrum, the gasoline additive like MTBE or other compounds are lighter than water. So it floats on top of the groundwater. And their velocity is faster than water velocity. So they float and they run faster than water. So we mostly found these in leaking underground tanks, storage tanks, and shape and size of those different plumes are definable because of their physical property of it. PFAS is very different. It's highly soluble in water and move with water. Just like I was talking to Alex, and it's just like he taught me, he said, well, it's just like, think about like putting sugar in the coffee. When you dissolve it, it's gone. You cannot get a trace, well, you will get a taste of it, but you cannot find it. But if you put oil or gasoline on top of your coffee, you will see it, either at the bottom or the top. So PFAS is totally homogeneous with, combined with the water and highly fluid. So because of that characteristic, on top of that being a very strong bond in that compound and not degradable, it is harder to define. That is why when you see 2023 type of situation, when you have a intense recharge in the arroyos, surface runoff, and no pumping, you can detect the dilution or change in concentration effect of it because it's moving with the water. And I like to describe it as a slushing effect. It's like a slushing. So that's a great description.
My description was it's just sloshing around in the groundwater basin. So it moves around, and depending on, groundwater operations, recharge, pumping, it just moves around. So as Ken says, it's a footprint. It's not coming from one source, going in one direction. And as Valerie said, it's sloshing around.
That is why it is more appropriate to describe this image as a snapshot of the PFAS footprint in a given time at the time of monitoring. I'm not saying this lightly, I mean it 100%. At the time of monitoring, this is what we see. It is a snapshot of the footprint of the concentration. If we go out and measure today, I can guarantee you it may change because of the slushing effect that we are talking about. So therefore, I think when the public concern about plume or migration, that is not correct representation of this compound. What it is basically a snapshot of the footprint that we gonna manage, either at the wellhead or by way of operation. So that is really important, board to notice, and I really recommend board to start using footprint, PFAS concentration, instead of a plume. So I really recommend that. And as well as if media is listening, they should pick up on it. That's a more correct representation. And it's not sensationalizing by saying plume, migration, and all that kind of a mischaracterization. So let's look at the lower aquifer PFAS footprint. If we look at it, you will see a smaller footprint. Again, this is a 10 parts per trillion, and you will see a panhandle on the graphic. That is, we just have that is also the demonstration of how monitoring can change. So we have that panhandle because we happen to sample the fairground wells, and we had a one spot of the data. So we have to connect it somehow. So we created a panhandle. It doesn't mean that the other area does not have it. We just don't know about it. So if we look at 2023, here we go. So you will see this is a 4 parts per trillion gradation at the outer bound. You see that the panhandle is gone because we have more sampling point. So we were able to delineate it in a better way. And also you will see a couple of blobs pop up in the eastern part of it, which wasn't there before. It's not that it's appearing overnight or migration. It's directly correlated to where we sample. PFAS is so ubiquitous because of the consumer product, not just unlike, like I said, other contaminant, TCE, PCE type of, how many dry cleaner we have in a town, maybe whatever, a number of it. But PFAS, every household, every front yard, every backyard, it could be source of PFAS. Because if you spill, any PFAS containing ingredient, just pesticides or any water sealants or anything you spill, that could become a source of the PFAS. And when we talk about 4 parts per trillion, we are talking about 8 drops of water in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pool. So if you have that much amount of concentration amount goes into the groundwater, you have 4 parts per trillion very easily. So every household, every place, backyard, front yard, could be the source. So that's why it is so difficult. The more we monitor it, the more we detect. So now I'd like to move on to what matters the most for us, which is our production well. This is a sampling at the wellhead. And as you can see, this is PFHXS graphic. I explained to you what that means for the public interest. So y-axis meaning the concentration, x-axis show the different wells. The vertical line is showing the range of the detection. So it could be, for example, Mocho 1, it could be 90 or it could be 25, just like that. But what I want you to get your attention to is that look at the yellow triangle. Yellow triangle is placed in different position in a vertical bar. What that means is, again, showing the fluctuation characteristic of the PFAS. It is not constantly increasing or it is not constantly decreasing. It is everywhere. It could be up or down or everywhere, middle, depends on the hydrology and all other mechanical activities around it. So that is what it is. But what matters the most for us is we have to meet the regulatory standards. So this is what PFHX has. This is what PFOS, similar situation. That vertical bar represent the range. The yellow triangle represent latest quarter sampling data. And you can see some are at the top, some are at the bottom, some are in the middle. So that is how fluctuating this compound is. So this is P4. The y-axis, P4 is the least problematic for us because normally we were able to meet even before the treatment. But now with the 4 parts per trillion, we have the hit, so we have to treat it. And the vessel that you guys ribbon cut it, treat all of them at once. So that is very effective. So that was the monitoring data. And I'd like to go on to now explain to you about blending and treating component updates. So blending and treating is to meet our current and future water quality standards. What we have done so far is we installed ion exchange PFAS treatment at the Stone Ridge, and we were able to use surface water more than groundwater. So ongoing action-wise, we are meeting primary water quality standards 5 years ahead of schedule. We are optimizing blending and treating to gain operational efficiency. What that means is we make sure that we operate the facility to meet the MCL by blending as well as the treating, a combination of those schemes to make sure that we are able to meet it. And as you know, we are constructing the Chain Lake facility and we should be able to commission that facility in early 2025. And because of that meeting requirements, we reduce the production of mutual well field by 2/3. Because mutual well field is where the mineralization facility is, and current facility setup only allow us to produce 1/3 of it, and we have to basically forego 2/3 of the capacity. So that's what we are studying right now. And we started the conceptual design, and we goal of having those facilities in coming years depends on the board direction. So treating PFAS and managing at the wellhead is the most effective approach. And we are the leader in Northern California. In Southern California, they are way ahead of us, and particularly in Orange County, there are dozens of PFAS treatment facilities already in place, but they must, because they depend almost 100% on the groundwater. So Orange County is one of the most prolific PFAS treatment area. So we have Stone Ridge, we have Chain Lake under construction, the pets are done, all the other facilities are being built, and later on that we're gonna have vessel deliver and install. And we are conducting the conceptual design study to identify optimal treatment configuration for Mocho. The reason we approach all of these projects methodically is that for financial responsibility, we like to make sure that our actions are not reckless. We are paying attention to all aspects of our values. And one of the things is financial responsibility. And we like to make sure that we come up with a design concept which is feasible as well as a financially responsible approach. So that's what we are doing right now. So now this is the fun part. I like these slides a lot. So this slide is gonna show you effectiveness of ion exchange PFAS treatment at the Stone Ridge. In this graph, the y-axis is the concentration, x-axis is the time every quarter. So every quarter we sample one, we got 1 dot. So we plot it. So since 2018, we have so many data points, we plot it. So you can call this as a trend. So this is a PFAS, PFHSS trend in Chain Lakes wellhead. So as you can see that the last data point is way above the even the California response level, above 40 in some instances, a PFHSS. So what we did, we installed the PFAS treatment facility vessels in there. We run this data point is before it going into the vessel, it go through the vessel, boom, right there, 2 parts per trillion. Actually, the actual water quality PFAS concentration even may be lower than that. That 2 parts per trillion is the reporting limit with a 95% confidence level. So the method is for the lab, they said, well, we are confident, 95% confident level. We can tell you it is not more than 2 parts per trillion. But in actuality, maybe lower than that, my suspicion is. But 2, I can live with that. Same thing with the PFOS. We throw in the vessel in there, but same vessel, but different, that media, ion exchange media take care of all these compounds. And then, boom, right there. We just effectively treated PFAS. And that's the water that we deliver. That's the water that we provide to the customer in accordance with our mission. That is the most effective way of managing PFAS. Better yet, I'm gonna continue to discuss water quality management component. In this case, managing water quality is, to extent possible, we like to prevent water quality degradation and potential mobilization. The key words here is to extent possible. We will do within our power, within our capacity to achieve this goal. And what we have completed so far is we analyzed the feasibility of injecting mocho. Maybe President Gam may remember this injection scenario where we are pumping from mocho 4, put in the mocho 1 injection to dilute the PFAS within the aquifer units. That is determined to be not feasible anymore. It may be feasible when PFAS reporting response level is 40, but now it's 4. It is not feasible. So we have to discontinue the effort. And we commence Stone Ridge facility operation. We recharge the basin with the imported water. So we will do regardless. This is our bread and butter. And ongoing activity-wise, to extent possible, we will try to prevent water quality degradation and potential mobilization. And we are the well permitting agencies. So we have the capacity to control how wells are drilled, how wells are constructed, how wells are perforated in our basin. So as an authority, whenever we see well application, permit applications, we will make sure that we make sure those new wells doesn't become a conduit for PFAS, or they are not taking water for consumption if it is not suitable. So we have the authority to do that. And when completed, operating the Demon facility, Stone Ridge and Chain Lake together, and that way that we were able to control the PFAS concentration to the extent possible. I will explain to you a little bit more. So this graphic shows two things. One thing is the main basin in light blue color, which we produce the water, municipal production. And you can see the different gradients, little arrows going the different direction. So for example, this green blob represents the zonal influence or the amount of water that Stone Ridge well may reach. This may represent amount of water and area of influence that Chain Lake's well will have. And this last blob represents Mocho well field zonal influence. If we are to operate all these facilities in concert, in synchronized way, we will be able to pump the water out of that zonal influence for consumption because we have the treatment facility. That is what managing the PFAS concentration means. That do the two things. One thing is, number one, remove the PFAS induced water and clean it and serve it to the customer. At the same time, having that 3 facility in that location pumping the water affect the gradient of the flow. Because when you pump the well, you create a cone of depression, just like a cone. So when you have 3 wells, fields are pumping that create a giant cone of depression, that will physically interfere with the flow of the water to the other direction. So that is what PFAS management is in terms of operationally. Well, this is kind of the slides that I have shown you back in 2022, but for the interest of the public, I will show you again. This simulates the scenario I just mentioned to you, that 3 blob scenario. In this scenario, we do the mobilization study to understand the effectiveness of it. So what it is, oops. If we are to operate the scenario, this is for upper aquifer unit, it goes like this. This is a 20-year time horizon. So you can see that the redder colors are more higher concentrated water, and lighter colors are less concentrated water. You can see it shrink over time. If you look at the lower aquifer unit, you will see the similar results, representing over a 20-year period of time. If we do the pump and treat at the wellhead, we will see some effect of it the way we would like. So again, this is from 2022 using the previous current groundwater model. And as you all know, we are currently updating our groundwater model to make it more refined model. And once we get that done, as a part of the regional project study, we will be doing the mobilization study again to understand how the concentration or footprint will change. So with that, last component is how do we diversify the groundwater resources? Originally, we have it as diversifying groundwater resources component. And as part of this final update, we refined it to say diversifying local resources. So we are not limiting ourselves to groundwater as well as the surface water as well. So that's why I strike it out and change it to local water resources. Idea is to become more resilient to droughts and emergency. I think this is really important and strike the chord with you because we are implementing the policy that you adopted. So what we have done so far is we recharged the groundwater base to 99% full. And we used state water projects and local runoff to meet the demands in 21, 23 years, 2022 and 2023. First year was 31%. Like I said, in 2023, we were able to use surface water for 95% of the demand. What we are going to do in coming years is we're going to update 2003 well master plan to analyze all the well that we have to make sure that we can sustain the future groundwater needs. And we like to add, or we are in process of studying to add new wells to diversify groundwater sources and remain sustainable. That is where our collaboration with the City of Pleasanton come by. And we're going to conduct feasibility study of local storage and conveyance project in the Chino Lake complex, where we are storing the surplus surface water in Lake I and pumping back to Delaware. Every situation is right. We are currently in feasibility phase. We are studying feasibility of that concept and also cost benefit of that. Finally, we're going to do, I know you all here heard one of the public member of the public commented on water supply evaluation. That is exactly what we're going to do in coming years. When we get a better clarity on current storage projects that we are investigating, we're going to look at all these viable options in a holistic way, and we have riverware models that we can run to calibrate it, to optimize all the water supply sources to be sustainable and to meet your reliability policy. So that is on the way. So just for your information, if you got asked, so yes, we are doing that. Then the question is, why do we need to diversify, right? I keep talking about diversifying. Why do we need to do that? This is a beautiful picture of Enterprise Bridge at Lake Orable, but the caveat is just in 2023. However, in 2021, same frame looks like this. This is when we were at the third year of the drought, and Orable is as low as you can see. And you can imagine what is a seawater project of reliability at that year. Well, let's look at local runoff. We are in a feast or famine type of local hydrology. This is a Home Street Bridge at Arroyo Mocho. This was in 2023. In normal time, it looks like this. So now you know why hydrology is such a wild swing. Well then, how about state water project delivery, right? State water project put out a draft delivery capability report in 2023. In this year, May, actually, a couple of months ago. It's projected that it will be a substantial reduction in delivery capability and reliability. because of climate change, as well as the regulatory constraint that we all know, even in this year, the fish restriction limited the seawater project pumpage. And the report essentially said that delivery capability will be reduced by as much as 23% in 20 years due to changing flow pattern and extreme weather shift. When you have this kind of a seismic level news, even the LA Times pick it up on their cover page. That is the reason staff believe that diversifying water supply with reliable local sources is essential. Let's visit the board policy on reliability. In October 2012, board adopted the resolution. Notably, there are two goals. One is to meet 85% of M&I. M&I stand for municipal and industrial water demand, 99% of the time, or 100% of M&I demand in 90% of the time. This is a high goal. But sometimes that we forgot about goal 2. That is directly related to groundwater development. And goal 2 said to meet at least 80% of maximum month demand, which is like July demand. In the event that extended unplanned outage of at least 1 week. In lead term, what that means is, let's say the SBA go down, let's say South Bay pumping plants go down, we don't have water from SBA, we don't have water from Delvar for some reason, or maintenance or gate operation, whatever, we don't have that. Or our Delvar treatment plant out of commission for some reason. That is Chris's nightmare. When we have that kind of local event, what is left with us? What is left with us is that 3 well field we currently have and 3 wellhead treatment facility that we have. Those groundwater wells are independent of Delvar or Patterson Pass because each well field treat its own water on site. Channel Lakes, 3 wells in one place, Hot Yards in one place, etc. That is the reason that reliance on groundwater and redundancy is extremely important. We have 2 kidneys, 1 field we can still live. We have 1 heart. If that one goes, we goes. So that's what essentially the basic concept of redundancy. Right now, we are trying, but we don't have redundancy currently. That's the reason we need to develop the regional project. To put more to what I said, this graphic shows basically the 3 scenarios of dry year, average year, and wet year water portfolio. The wet year, we are fine. 80% surface water, no problem. Average year, but we got half of it. I want to draw your attention to dry year, which is the top bar, where groundwater make up about 1/3 of it, and other 1/3 is coming from current bank that we have the water bank there. And we have state water project is really 15, 16%, and Lake Delvar is about 10%. I want you to think about this. If we don't have the well field in operation, that green bar gonna be shrink by half or 2/3. What are we gonna do? We may ask for more conservation. We may have other restriction on the water use. That is the reason that groundwater is so important for our portfolio. If we look at our well field, now I'm going into basin a little bit. If you look at it, our well field, we originally have 11, and then Mocho 1 is out of commission, and so is Hop 7. So we end up with 9. And 7 out of 9 wells are in Amador Subbasin. I did not come up with that subbasin delineation. DWR did. DWR developed those Bulletin 118 and established the subbasin characteristic back in 1966. In 1974, it defined the Barnell subbasin and delineated eastern boundary being a Pleasanton fault. But that is questionable. The scholars are still studying this. And this is a very complex basin, and one of the notable geologists we have is on the board, and Northleaf Consultant study it as well. And Director Figure knows this inside out. And he will agree with me that geological features present and there are sub-basin exist. So I did not come up with the sub-basin concept. And even as late as 2006, Bulletin 118, it characterized Pleasanton Fault as a restricted structure, noting that Pleasanton Fault parentheses act as a barrier to lateral flow of groundwater. So when we look at the regional groundwater project, we like to go to the west of the Pleasanton Fault because there may be some impediment to communicating with the Amador subbasin. So I know public has concern about this, and I will repeat it again. Zone 7 approach projects and develop projects very methodically. We don't recklessly develop any project. We go through methodical process, analyze, study, and come up with the best optimum solution for the benefit and best interest of our retailers and their customers. So we will continue to do that. And even currently, what we are doing is studying merely feasibility of that kind of projects. So to emphasize my point, I'd like to show you something. This is the Amador West Subbasin groundwater information. So this represent the y-axis represent depth to the groundwater from 0 to negative, meaning going down 40 feet, 80 feet, etc. Our reference is 1983 when the basin is 100% full. So you can see historical basin full level is about 40 foot below grade. If basin is full all the way, that should have been the case, right? 40 foot below grade all the way through. Well, we have droughts, and in actuality, when you have droughts, this is how basin water level behave. You can see we started somewhere, we pump over the summer, goes down, the fall comes around, we fill it back up a little bit. Second year, we pump more, we recover a little bit, and this is my nightmare. The third year of the drought, we are drawing down the basin significantly. Then what happened? This represents Chino Lake 1 wells back in 2022, August. This well went dry. Like I said, we already have fewer wells and less capacity. And if we have this kind of situation where our production well goes dry because water level is so low we can't reach anymore, because we depend 7 out of 9 wells in one sub-basin. That is the reason we look into diversifying groundwater resources. So this is a part of the slides I presented to you back in 2022, where we identify two area to investigate potential projects, and we easily eliminated the east end of it because we don't have infrastructure. It will be cost prohibitive to develop new groundwater wells in this area, and also recharge is very anemic. So we easily eliminate that. Then we are left with the west end or Barnell subbasin. That is the reason we are currently collaborating with City of Pleasanton to study the feasibility of a regional project where we can take advantage of economy of scales for the both entity to benefit from, and less impact to environment and the community and cost effectiveness and all of that. So why do we investigate feasibility? Number one, we need to analyze the native water quality, potential yields, and treatment needs. For example, if we hit something that we never known before, we have to rethink. Secondly, we have to select the sites out of the 3 test well locations to develop the full-grown production well, so that only with the test drilling we will be able to identify that. And this is important. This came up in city council meetings and the president as well, which is why are we doing 3? So we do 3 because we need to understand and analyze for fatal flaws. What is fatal flaws? If we drill one site, for example, if we hit water quality condition where high level arsenic or chromium-6. People don't talk about much a lot. If we hit them and we don't have a treatment in place right now, so in that case, that site is not suitable. We shouldn't be investing in that kind of site. That is fatal flaw for us. And we have to assess infrastructure needs. We like to take advantage of existing facility, and we like to develop integrated treatment system. So how long of a pipeline that we will need? How much of an upgrade do we have to do? That cannot be done without knowing exactly where we're going to put the wells in, how long the pipeline is going to be from that. That is the reason we are exploring the feasibility and test drilling. And with that, we go one step farther. We go and we're going to develop the basis of design to understand 10% design level. What would it take to develop those production wells? What would the cost to do those kind of things? Without understanding the yield, our partnership is based on assignment of the volume, the production capacity. City of Pleasant like to recover 3,500 groundwater production quota. We will take whatever above that 3,500. So let's say that two site yield only 7,000 acre feet a year. That means that we are splitting the cost in half, 3,500 each. If City of Pleasant, the sites are productive and we find that it can produce 10,000 acre feet, and we're gonna give City of Pleasanton their share of 3,500, which is the upper maximum limit of GPQ, they will be chipping in 35% of the cost. We pick up on 65. Without drilling and without testing the yield, how can we formulate the cost sharing? That is the reason that we are drilling. More importantly, we have to evaluate the economy of scale for Pleasanton and Zone 7 based on that cost distribution. And finally, those are the information that we need to make the case for the governing bodies like you and City of Pleasant City Council to make a decision whether this joint collaboration makes sense for each party. That is why we are drilling in Pleasanton. So if we look at test well location, we strategically place those locations. One is being in the tennis park. This is our existing Hopia well feed and treatment facility. And other one is in Hanson Park. Other one is in Del Prado Park. We're gonna drill these locations, shortlist them, identify which combination or locations are most beneficial, and then develop the pipeline. May not be all of it, but depends on where we determine the most prolific site. We're gonna pipe it to the Hopia facility. That is where we may need to enlarge the facility to treat the additional capacity. And if you just look at it, it just makes sense because it will be economy of scale benefits for both cities and the Zone 7. That's why we are currently advertising the request for proposal. And if everything goes well, we will be able to start commencing the drillings in the next couple of months. Then what are the next steps? What are the key takeaways? I like to argue that the PFAS is ubiquitous in the environment and generally everywhere. I like to argue that PFAS most likely come from multiple legacy sources, point sources and non-point sources, ongoing domestic discharges from our homes. The complete elimination of PFAS sources is almost impossible, and I'm sure my colleagues at the Water Board will agree with that, and not until PFAS is totally removed from consumer products. Increased monitoring could yield previously unknown PFAS concentration and footprint, like I explained to you earlier. It doesn't mean that it's just migrating or popping up. It is just that we are observing those new sites. The groundwater recharge and pumping and treating can change the PFAS concentration. It cut the both way. When we recharge, it might affect the concentration. When we pump, it might affect the concentration in different direction. The wet year hydrology can influence the concentration, as I show you in the previous slides. And ongoing monitoring, pump and treat operation, modelings are helpful to study and manage the PFAS better. but need to prepare for eventual wellhead treatment for PFAS and other emerging contaminants. I think I like to drill that number 7 to your attention, because although that we are doing good, we are managing PFAS currently fine, but like I mentioned in earlier this presentation, we just can't know what will be the future regulatory requirements are. So we have to be mentally ready, and most effective way is to treat at the wellhead. And by the way, that is where the point of compliance for the Division of Drinking Water Standards is the water before going into the system. There's a compliance point. That is exactly where we need to meet the MCLs. I think that is why I like to get your attention on number 7 wholeheartedly. And finally, I think public outreach effort to inform public of federal information is really essential. It cut both ways. Public got worried about things, and I like to share my viewing public that Zone 7 is doing everything within our capacity to meet the drinking water standards, and even now we are meeting it 5 years ahead of the requirements. That is a testament for our board direction, our management team action to meet that MCL. Number 9 is meeting MCL, like I said, is at the point of compliance of distribution system, not in the basin or not at the well. And again, I'm going to emphasize those are national drinking water standards. So what are we doing next? We will continue monitor. We'll continue to coordinate with the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Control Board. As you can see, the collaboration between 2 agencies and regulators and us working together is a very refreshing way of managing this challenging task. And we're going to continue to share information with the State Board of Division of Drinking Water. We will need them when we try to amend our system permits. And we continue to upgrade the groundwater model and analyze the other analysis, continue to do that. We will complete the Chain of Lakes. We will proceed with regional project feasibility study to diversify the groundwater supply sources. And we will develop basin-wide water quality management plan as per the direction from General Manager. And we will update the well master plan so that we analyze and understand what we have, well asset, and so that we can prepare and improve our well system for next 20 years. And we will identify optimal PFAS treatment configuration for mutual well fields, which is Chris is taking on currently. And pumping and treating the PFAS at the Stone Ridge, Chain of Lake, and Mocho facility is the way to go. And water supply operation to manage supply needs as go along. And we will continue to develop Chain of Lakes conveyance system concept so that we can diversify between surface and groundwater. So I started out my presentation by noting our strategic plans and initiative, and I'd like to get your attention on this slide, basically saying mission, vision, and values. So I think our action show how we withhold our values. I think our values are manifested itself by way of our action and transparency, customer service collaboration, environmental sensibility, physical responsibility, leadership, proactivity. Those are there. But let me touch on that vision a little bit. One key words that I take away from this vision is economic vitality and environmental health. So currently that we are serving more than 250,000 people, and our Tri-Valley assessed value is about $343 billion. Our wine region in Livermore, South Livermore wine region generated about $2.4 billion estimated annual economic activities. That including the tourism, wages, charitable giving, all of that. 500,000 people visited our region in 2022. With that, we, as a Zone 7, are water suppliers to the region, not just for the municipal industrial supply, because we cover the municipal industrial supply side very carefully. We were able to support wine growers and as untreated customers. So what we are doing here is not just water supply or water quality protection. It is for economic vitality of the region, as stated in the vision that you adopted. And the guy like me, to be honest with you, going through a couple of grad school and eating pizza out of the pizza boxes, fast food wrapper, and Friday night microwave popcorns, I may have PFAS right here. But it doesn't matter to me or anymore. But it mattered to the kids I showed the picture of. It mattered to the new moms who is making baby formula with our water. It mattered to them greatly. So that's why I take pride and all the staff in what we do as a Zone 7 as a whole and the board as the governing body. I think we are doing a great job, I have to say myself, and I hope many will agree with it. So I think that is my presentation to you, and I'd like to acknowledge James Carney, Jacob Danielson, Mike Cargillo, Rich Gold, Angela O'Brien, Sal Segura, Colin Winey, Lillian Scher. Those are the staff members that supported me with this presentation. I cannot do this kind of thing alone. We have a great team behind us and making it happen for you. And with that, should I take a break? Or?
Yeah, I would suggest a break.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. I want to first just thank staff and the regional board for their very thorough and comprehensive presentation. And now I fully understand why we have a special meeting for this subject. So we'll take a break. Why don't we come back about 22, and then the board will ask questions, and then we'll get the public input and come back for some questions and comments from the board. So with that, let's take a break. Welcome back to our special meeting. So this was the presentation on PFAS, and now we're going to get questions from our board. Who would like to begin? Go ahead, Director Green.
All right. So, excellent, by the way, really thorough. I appreciate the work that went into this, and I learned a few things today, which is good because, you know, I ask you questions on the side all the time, so I thought I was current, but I got a few new nuggets. So the thing that I'm kind of chewing on right now, I'm trying to understand, is when we look at the trends on the PFAS concentrations and the configuration of the plume. And I agree with you that dilution might be part of it because we had a lot of rain. But also, you did say something which I think is true. It's sort of like two sides of a coin. You mentioned that not pumping would be no influence. I actually think not pumping can also, if you look at the other side of that coin, can be a lack of influence can mean something else can take over. Another well could be stronger. And so I kind of wondered if when you look at the sort of increase and decrease, and then it looks like it may be kicking back up a little bit on some of these PFAS trends, like at the Stone Ridge well, if you think not pumping might be part of that scenario.
Correct. I think I agree with you. I was referring to 2023 where we have minimum pumping, therefore the majority of effect is from the recharge. And I absolutely agree that pumping sometimes is our friends. That's what PFAS management is all about. When we pump and treat, the pumping definitely going to have hydraulic effects. So I agree with you, Dr. Green.
Well, that led me then to think about sort of the shape of the plume. It's an interesting shape, and I'm just wondering if there was a time, you may not have the data for this, previously, where the plume got stretched out because there wasn't some pumping where we pump now, and you have some of the cow wells over to the east, whether that might have sort of elongated or stretched the plume east.
That could be. Yeah, so I think the way that we contour is that we base on that information, the points that we have, and we basically fill in that, blank, so to speak. So the more we monitor in coming years, we will learn more about it. But what you proposed is not incorrect. I think the lack of pumping could, influence that direction, hydraulics of the basin as well. But 2023 itself, I would argue that most of the effect is from the recharge activities.
Fair enough. Yeah, I appreciate that. When the model is done, there's all sorts of scenarios you'll be able to run, so it'll be interesting to see
Right,
if you
so
learn
when the
anything
model
like
is
that.
done, part of the contract is we're gonna have the consultant run with the new regional well location pumping from them. We like to understand what would be the effect of that or lack thereof. So we will study that and we will determine whether it is feasible or not. But at the end of the day, the most complex thing about it is that, like I said, unlike traditional classic plume scenario where dry cleaner or industrial chrome plater, we don't have that kind of a defined source. So be it that regional board trying to investigate it, and they will be the one that tell you they will be focused on the industrial site, but they cannot really look at every household or every front yard or backyard. So having said that, PFAS sources could be anywhere. So not from the particular source or existing current configuration or footprint. It could be elsewhere that we don't know about. That's why I caution you, even if we are not seeing it today, it doesn't mean it's not there. It could be there if we sample it or increase monitoring. But right now, we are working with the information that we have as a snapshot of a time.
And I appreciate what you're saying, because with like a TCE or PCE plume, which is what you were referring to, you often have a pretty strong product that works its way down, sits in the aquifer, and then just acts as a source continuously.
Right, that's
Here,
why it is.
it might be
This
different.
meet the definition of plume is a blob in the ground, and
So here, it might be more controlled by a source that is continuous or no longer continuous, and so on, So, yeah, you have a lot of variation there to work with. So.
and on top of that is a biodegradation. Biodegradation is feasible for other hydrocarbon products. PFAS is so strong, and even when we dispose our ion exchange resin, it has to be incinerated at 2200 Fahrenheit to wipe it out. And still, scientists are arguing where does it go, whether it go and release into the air or not. So it is conservation of energy. Where does it go? They don't know that yet. But right now, for example, we changed the media in Stone Ridge. It's going to be incinerated at 2200 degree Fahrenheit. In comparison, the wood firing piece of Auburn is about 850. So that's strong. So that PFAS bond is so strong.
That's all for right now. Go ahead.
The reason I raised my hand right now is
Director Palmer, go ahead.
I have a follow-up kind of like to what Lorene was saying. And correct me if I'm wrong. Part of my understanding as to why the footprint sort of changed and extended is not just that, things are moving, obviously, but is it also because you're doing more testing in various different regions?
Correct. Correct.
It may have been there before, and it looks like it has this footprint that goes like this, and it's really like that, but it was there before, but we didn't test all those regions.
Yeah, so for example, I give you a very plain example. If we sample only 3 locations,
Yeah.
and we are happy with it, I can guarantee you that delineation of that is about this big.
Right.
Now
right.
that we intentionally increase the network by 50%, then we'll find more. And
You look for it, you're going to find it. Okay. Yeah. And then I have a couple questions, if I may, Dennis. At one point, I think it was slide 55, you don't have to go to it, but you were saying that at 2 parts per trillion, it may be lower. So we don't use that designation of non-detect anymore?
No, the lab doesn't issue non-detect because they give you reporting level with a 95% confidence level. That is not method detection limit. Method detection limit is lower than that. But lab is not confident enough to put it in the lab report saying that, let's say 1.
It's at 1.8
1.5.
or
They
something
cannot
like
do
that.
So they say, if they go that low, their 95% confidence level is 2.
Okay.
So our system is functioning. I'm biased, so I think our system is functioning better than it shows on that.
Okay, so at some point, like if it does go below the detection limit, we do say just non-detect as opposed to we don't have it. Do we still say non-detect ever?
Well, it depends on lab report. Lab follow their protocol and their standards, EPA, 511, 13 or something. Don't quote me there, but there are different technique that they have to
Sure,
follow.
I
So the lab are licensed, registered labs, so they have to follow certain protocol. So what they produce on their lab report is the one that we use to put in our.
So we do send out to these labs that
Correct,
have
correct.
these,
We
yeah.
cannot do it in-house, yeah.
Okay. Another question that I had was, you said we don't really have Gen X here.
Yes,
And
yeah,
is that
yeah.
simply because we don't have the manufacturing capabilities in this area, or why is it we don't detect Gen X?
I thought about that, Dr. Palmer. So my thinking is that depends on the history of the product that we use in the Western region versus what industry or product that they use in the East Coast. For example, Midwest has different slew of compounds. So a lot to do with manufacturers and.
Yeah, back
the
east, there's lots of it,
different-
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the one thing I like to note is that one thing we don't have today is a forensic analysis of PFAS. No scientist today can have that forensic capability to, for example, investigate the source of it, characterization of that, and discharge, when it was discharged. Forensically, they cannot investigate it because there's no half-life. If it's other compound, there's always, even radium, has a half-life.
But
So
wouldn't there also be fingerprints of how much, which different kinds of PFAS are in
Right,
there?
but PFAS is so strong and it doesn't biodegrade. They cannot forensically date it when it was. So that is challenging. That's why all these claims are against the manufacturers.
Okay. Now, just a question which you may not have the answer to.
Yes.
But do you foresee the California drinking water standards being more stringent than the federal, or maybe staying along with the federal?
What I'm hearing from our water quality manager is that it will adopt 4 parts per trillion, although that OEHR has that 0.0007. It's make me
They drive me
wonder.
crazy.
It is even parts per trillion time, another million. So it is. I cannot even fathom that.
We can't even detect that low,
No,
yeah.
yeah, right. So, yeah. So, to answer your question, right now, what I'm hearing is they will adopt 4 parts per trillion as a California standards.
Okay, and now okay, can I ask, I'm gonna ask an off-the-wall question here. And I've only seen it in one paper, I haven't seen it in a bunch of papers, but does water treatment, like especially with wastewater and that, does it create de novo PFASs?
Well, regional board has the volunteer study, investigate that. And I'm not aware of how the process changed the composition, but one thing that everybody agree is that after the process, it become more detectable. It's not that process increase or decrease the concentration, but they noticed that they were able to sample more different variety of compounds at the
Is
end.
it because it's potentially just changing the tail length of the?
I don't have expertise in that, so I don't want to speak on behalf of the wastewater agency, but I'm basing on the publicly available reports on the water board website. Actually, Dr. Green looked at it before. So basically, it's become more detectable. It doesn't mean whether it, generate or not. I don't know that part, but more detectable.
If you find out more about that, shunt it off to me, that'd be
This
great.
is not our area of expertise.
I know,
So,
I'm
we
sorry, I
would
told
refer
you it was off the wall, I told you,
Yeah.
So,
okay? I warned you
we'll
ahead
refer
of time.
to the regional board website.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and let's see, other question, hang on, I think I have one more in here, I have to turn my thing sideways. Okay, ask that one, and then, okay, in the test wells that you showed on slide 59, how close is the footprint to those test wells? Is it on the other side of the fault line?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. That's it for me.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your presentation once again. Always learn something, and good to get caught up, I think, where we are. Several kind of random questions. You mentioned the hazard index. Are we under 1 for that?
Yes,
Okay, and not close, I assume?
no, because those compounds are not applicable to us.
You mentioned, I think
Yeah.
one of them
It's a
might be applicable, the P,
FHXS, yeah, it goes into the formula, but when they blend it with all other compound, it's not a factor.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we're not concerned about
It's a weird
that.
formula.
The Sentinel well in the sports park to the
Yeah.
east of the Hopyard well field, is that still measuring
Below
non-detect?
MCL, yes,
No,
yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes, below that, the MCL,
Okay.
yeah.
Below the MCL, or so meaning that you're detecting PFAS there, or?
We have trace amount of it, but it's not something alarming to the concern.
And when we put the well in, was it non-detect, or did we?
No, it was the first time that we sampled it. We have a
Okay.
trace amount,
but
but
not-
it's not to the level of concern.
Okay.
Low 2?
Yeah, that's good. Let's see, what else do I have? So for the Stone Ridge well, now that we've had that up and operating for what, 8 months?
Yeah,
Something on that
something
order?
like that, yeah.
How is the media performing? Is it, in terms of the life of it? Are we tracking what we thought, or better, worse?
I'll answer that.
Okay.
We've barely been operating Stone Ridge because it came online, we had the 100% surface water allocation, so we were letting the groundwater basin recharge and basically just running the well. I don't say every once in a while, but to keep it in use and learn how the facility is. But I don't think we're anywhere near estimating. If Ken and Chris or I gave you an estimate right now, we'd just be making it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want that. Thank you. And then with the presentation by the Regional Water Board, there was discussion about exploring sources or potential sources of the PFAS. Is that being expanded out? Because what struck me was on the map we're showing the PFAS locations. Up in Sacramento area, it looked like there were all kinds
I
of,
let Alec take on that question. Alec, come on over here.
sorry.
Is this
Yeah,
live?
it's on, yeah.
Great. Alec Noggle with the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board. You were asking about the source investigations
Right.
that we're leading. We're focusing on, as we heard in the presentations, there's PFAS comes from many sources. We're looking for the most likely point sources from commercial industrial discharges, and those, from the last few years, what we've realized is that the worst are coming from sites that used the firefighting foams like AFFF. So we're looking at fire stations that are situated in and around that plume map that we saw, and also the Livermore Airport. We've issued a directive to the airport to do a groundwater investigation with the goal of figuring out if there is still a discharge of PFAS from those properties that could be feeding that plume. That's what we're trying to figure out, current sources that could still be feeding it, and then we can look at options to turn the tap off, essentially.
But then, when you had your map up, or the map was up there, it looked like there were a number of sources or identification of PFAS towards Sacramento. And so I was wondering, do we have any sense that that's migrating down here and contributing to our basin?
Oh, you mean through surface water? That's
No,
imported?
through ground, through the aquifers?
Oh, yeah, no, there's a disconnect between the aquifer systems.
Meaning there's
and the
some kind of
Central
land
Valley.
formations that,
Yeah, you have the Diablo Range that separates those basins. So there isn't any. We're not worried about a
So we're pretty
groundwater connection.
confident that we're just looking, in the valley, trying to,
Yeah.
okay,
yeah.
all right.
Out to the bay.
It's local sources feeding that fairly localized plume.
And then
that-
trying to figure out how to turn them off.
Yeah, working with them. In some cases, they may be fire stations or places where, municipal entities. So we have to think about how we can work with them cooperatively and coordinate, and they have funding issues that they have to deal with to come up with money to do these investigations. So that's where we've been spending our time to work with
Okay.
them.
All right, that makes sense. All right. Thank you. And I think my last question, this is a pretty detailed presentation, and I was wondering, we'll put this up on the website and link to the video and everything.
Yes, we'll have the slides up by tomorrow morning. The video will coordinate with TV 30 on that. There'll be a little bit more of a lag, but yes, it will live on in the internet forever,
Will the animations work?
just like PFAS.
All right, I think
Dr.
that's,
Figures? Go ahead.
thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your talk because you talked about a three-legged stool. You talked about the interaction of the technical, the political, and the operational. You gave enough detail for each one to let everybody know we really know what we're doing, and we know what we're going to be doing in the city in the future, excuse me. And if problems come up, we know how to handle it. So, in other words, you didn't have overkill, but you had sufficient data. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Director Benson?
Okay, so I have a couple questions too. First of all, thank you for both, for everybody's presentation. I think it was very concise, very educational, not too over our heads, but sometimes they are, so give us a break a little bit. But they were very well done. And a couple things that I wanted to touch on is that what is the process for extracting the PFAS out? Because I think I've gone onto the state boards or from the San Francisco board's website to look for how do they treat the water? And I think for this particular case, I think it's really important for people to understand just how amazing this treatment is, because that is also another kudo to how we're able to treat this. Because I know as we go from 6 to 14 or to 13,994, then obviously there's more to come. And from my understanding and doing some groundwater tours and being involved in some of the groundwater efforts, I also want to say that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it is literally it. And if you look at you had it on your wheel tonight. But anyway, explain the process, sorry.
So
I just want to add, or before Ken speaks, but we have a really cool video about that, and that's on our YouTube channel. So I would recommend that you refer people to that to understand how this state-of-the-art treatment works.
yeah, so that's exactly what I'm going to say is we have educational videos showing the process in graphical way. Basically, is the positive and negatives. That is why ion. It charges, basically the simplest way of saying is it's like those vessels just like magnet. It just suck the PFAS compound out of it, adhere to the little ball, which is a little resin ball. So those resin balls are charged, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's a positive, and then PFAS is negative. It attract each other, it's like a magnet. And then that's why we have to get rid of whole resin and then burn it. So that is how it works. And that's also a good information to say that those resins are designed to remove certain type of compounds, right? So it's only magnet works for only certain type of compounds. If there are additional, for example, compound that regulated or other things, this resin may not work. So we may have to add more vessel or swap out, maybe some of them with the different resin to clean that. So that's how it works.
But I think we have such a great we're ahead of the game right now, which I
Correct.
think is super important.
Absolutely.
And with the 2 other plants coming on, that's also another benefit. I've gone to conferences and mentioned them, people who want to come down and visit our plant because I think we're just starting. And I think Regional Water Board, everybody's just like, it's like, where do you put the plug in the hole? It's getting bigger and bigger. And as General Manager Pryor said, it's like, it's slushy, but it's like the baby in the bathwater. You know, the babies are all playing in the bathwater and the plume is going everywhere. The other question is for the regional board. Are we doing something are we capturing the data? Because it looks like there's a data. I was at a conference in San Francisco in June, and they said there's a huge amount of data that needs to be developed. And what grants or what can we do to support you and our, to get those data modeling? I mean, I know there's some data modeling, but I don't know if I'm stating it correctly, but it seems like that's like another source of funding the EPA maybe be able to grant, because I think the more data that we can gather, the data is out there.
Yeah, you're asking a great question. More data would be great. We are managing the data we have. We do have limited resources. The governor, in balancing his budget, needed to cut. State board, regional boards lost 4% of their positions. They're also looking at cutting another $50 million from the state board and regional boards. So we have our limitations, but we're lucky. We have very talented staff. With the data we have, we're managing it well. We are pursuing different opportunities, like from EPA. I think as PFAS continues to evolve and there's more information on PFAS, I think there's going to be more opportunities for grant and other fundings also for us and for agencies. But
There's a place in San Diego at UCSD called the San Diego Supercomputing, and that's a big data resilience repository right now that might be of use to investigate, because they might be able to help you with some funding and some talent.
Okay, great. Thanks for that suggestion. We're always open to suggestions. We can look into that. Thank you.
Yeah, because a friend of mine used it for the malaria project for the Gates Foundation. So it's been, and they're doing data research all over the world and collecting it there. But anyway, because I remember in talking to Dr. Harder and the whole group, they were, it's like we're still new into the whole data collection, and the more, what can we, as board members, go to Aqua, go wherever we need to go to try to get this funding more involved. Yes, sorry.
I also wanted to add that our state water board in Sacramento has I think it's called a PFAS mapping tool that is a clearinghouse for PFAS data from drinking water supply wells that are sampled, and any of the directives that our state board has issued since 2019. All of the data is placed there, and it's in a mapping tool, so a GIS interface, so you can see where it is. And I think the link to it is on our regional board website.
Okay.
So if you want to go there, I just wanted to put a shout out there. So it's been worth,
GeoTrack or GIS?
yeah.
Esri, right? Yeah. And Stacey, what else do I have? Also, I have also, and for both you, both the regional board and for our group, isn't there PFAS also in the rain? I mean, from my understanding, it's being absorbed within our weather patterns, right? It's in the atmosphere. So when we have atmospheric rivers, obviously, is it blending all over the place? I mean, I just see it's like it's
It goes where the
concatenating
rain
everywhere.
goes, yeah. I don't know the concentrations. Kimberly West, our PFAS team lead, would probably know that better than I do. But yes, I've heard at low concentrations, they're finding it in rain, and that does present a very important concern. It really just comes down to those concentrations and how that can be, how do you tease that out from other sources that may be contributing? And in the end, it still points back to the wellhead treatment, this treatment that you're doing, because it may be nearly impossible to stop all these sources for these 14,000 compounds and things we've already put into the environment.
Okay. Let's see what else.
Does that mean you can't collect rainwater for reuse?
I don't even want to go there. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm going down a dirty road.
Oh,
But I think I really appreciate
I'm gonna go next.
I appreciate your resources, both our resources on both the regional board and Zone 7, and Eileen and her team, and Ken and Valerie. They have done such a great job in moving us forward. So And as well as the board has adopted that as well. But I highly recommend everybody can go look at the resources because that's the educational piece. The last thing I do have one more thing. What, are we affected at all by the lab? I mean, that's a whole different can of worms, but
Yeah,
we
it's-
don't, they don't
It's
have
a
any,
federal facilities.
we do testing there as
Yeah,
well,
we got a
right?
report from them time to time for the on-site monitoring well. That's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're involved in that as well. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I just conferred with Kimberly that it's a federal facility, a Department of Energy facility, and in our office, we have staff that work with them as well as another state department, the Toxic Substances Control. And I understand that an investigation is being planned to look at PFAS in their groundwater.
Okay.
And, right now, I don't think we have those results.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a quick follow-up question before you sit down. Is it possible, some of the wastewater that comes from the lab goes to wastewater facilities? There's some discharges, I understand it. Are you looking into that for PFAS too? As a source?
Wastewater is a challenge, and we are we're beginning outlining a way to investigate all the sources of the influent to wastewater treatment plants to see if there's any what we might call smoking guns, high source signals,
Okay.
and
I know they do have a discharge permit, so
yeah,
it'd
so
be
it's
easy to
yes.
find out.
They have
Wastewater
permits, I
from the lab.
believe.
They have permits, but not for PFAS. Nobody does. Yeah.
Any more questions? I got to,
And I could add to that, Josh. Yeah, so the regional board required, there's the 40 wastewater agencies within our region. We required PFAS studies, and there's been studies and investigations done by them. Yes, once again, they're kind of like Zone 7. They inherited stuff's coming in to their plant, so we've required them to test their influent, the water flowing into the wastewater plant, the effluent, what they discharge. A lot of them discharge to San Francisco Bay. Their biosolids, which is a byproduct of the treatment process. And yes, we found PFAS and influent, effluent, and in the biosolids, but they were at lower levels than other wastewater plants throughout the state, and they weren't of the concern. You might have seen the New York Times article this past weekend, front page, was on biosolids in other parts of the country and where cows were dying with the land application, and luckily ours in the Bay Area, PFAS limits in the biosolids was far lower than these others in other parts of the country where they were having issues. And we continue to work with the wastewater agencies. It's really a source control problem, and it's just flowing into the plant. So we have done some studies.
so,
Thank you for all you do.
yeah. Ken, I'd like you to find a slide that shows the main basins and the sub-basin. You talked a bit about the sub-basins. I wanted to kind of dial in a little bit to see if I understand what you guys are trying to do there.
Oh, that's a far up. Okay, let me see. How can I?
Which our numbering is different than theirs.
32. Okay. Okay, got it.
There was,
I think well field that
there's a main basin is,
right here.
that's the one, 67 in the new. Right. So that shows the main basin, and you mentioned that there's sub-basins. So the main basin is composed of these sub-basins, and you had a discussion that had to do with, we didn't name them, and we're not sure how these boundaries work, but I know that we're looking at the Burnell Basin for regional well locations with the city. And can you discuss the connection between those basins and how it affects our planning, how we're monitoring it? Because obviously we don't want PFAS to migrate to that Burnell Basin.
So, like I said, this light color blue shaded area is our main basin. And you will see the dashed line representing the geological features posing as restricted structure acts as a barrier to lateral flow of groundwater by 2006 DWR Bulletin 118. So that's technically saying that's a restricted structure impeding the flow to the west. So that is what subbasin boundary is according to the DWR. Those geological features subdivide the main basin to 3 components. So our wells are here, Hopyard wells are here. So you asked a really important question, which I will answer with a qualification. For example, when we have the pumping test for the groundwater model update in this well, where my laser dot is, normally when you pump a well, it's create a conal depression, affect the water level around it. So you will see the drawdown or lowering the groundwater level around this well field. So we monitor the Sentinel well, which is where this yellow star is. We don't see the effect of that from pumping of this well field. Geohydrologically, that is telling me that it has some sort of a hydraulic discontinuity between this well field and that. When every well else is drawing down, this side or this well is not showing any sign of a drawdown. Yes, approximately. So that is what it is. And also, DWR defined those sub-basin because they observed the groundwater level different in the Amador sub-basin and the western Barnell sub-basin. That is the inference. So here's the important point. There's no guarantee there's a total solid concrete wall dividing the 2 sub-basins. The reason for that is when we recharge in the east, when we recharge in these arroyos, where the laser dot is, there's a lag time between water level increase in this part of the basin and this part. This part will also got recharged, let's say 3 months or 4 months down the line that we will see the water level increase. So they are not totally isolated. If it's totally isolated, our recharge in this area may not reach to the west. So again, those sub-basins are restricted by or defined by those geological features, but still there are some sort of continuity between them. So that is what it is. But Hopyard well field, which we have been operating for longest time, has no PFAS whatsoever. As much as we're concerned about, we don't have any of those. So while we are placing the regional project well site, that's the reason that we like to test drill in those areas and then run the computer model to see additional pumpage in that area may change or affect the concentration as we know it. But wild card is, I was discussing this with Director Green during the recess. What if there are concentrations that we don't know about in Barnell sub-basin? If we drill a well or even the Hopyard well, we may start detecting it if there is there. So that's a difficult challenge about PFAS, is that not like classic plume where you can define the shape and extent of it. This is happen to be everywhere. So we just have to go with very cautious approach in water development. Even if, for example, President Gam, we find no PFAS, we are able to develop the well with the model results. It does not totally guarantee or immune from us for future or potential other sources that we don't know about. So that's why I was driving the point that we have to anticipate needs for the wellhead treatments for current and future regulation in foreseeable future. That's where I'm getting to.
Yeah, I'd like to comment
Can
on.
I jump in there a sec?
No, let's let staff.
Well, I was going to comment on future treatment. I'm assuming our resident geologist is going to comment on geology.
Okay, go ahead first if you're going to do that, but
Yeah,
this is unusual.
we show.
We have an expert in-house, so on the board, which we might as well take advantage of.
Geology is, everybody looks at structure. But back in the 1890s, this was a major water supply, believe it or not, for San Francisco. and they produced a series of 7 or 8 wonderful east-west cross-sections, very detailed, down to 400 to 500 feet. And there are a series of east-west dipping clay layers that appear and disappear, and it actually could be stratigraphic discontinuities that are causing this. So yes, it's geology. What type of geology, we don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a comment on future treatment. I think that we all realize that the way, groundwater regulation is going, that likely there will be full treatment of all groundwater at some point in the future. But, for our community, we're investing in 3 PFAS facilities over like this 5-year period, so that's a major financial investment. If, we can be in a different, if we drilled more wells in the Amador subbasin now, we know we'd be doing treatment right now. But if we can be in the Bernal subbasin and, that gives us, 5 or 10 years before we have to contemplate treatment, that spreads that financial burden out over many years. So I think we do recognize we will likely be looking at additional treatment in the future, but if we could spread that out over multiple years, that would be more financially responsible.
Thank you. That's a good point. We don't know what's going to happen, but the groundwater basin is too important not to be able to use, so the cost is what we're going to have to pay to use it. So anyway, one more question before we go to the public. Okay, let's go to them. We don't want to take too much time. We'll come back to us. Okay, so this one has to do with the long-term need for treatment. In other words, we know that we did a model for what happens in 20 years. We know that we're dealing with this forever chemical. We know that they haven't even made all of the PFAS chemicals illegal to manufacture. And so in the long term, and I guess the other good point that you guys made was that this isn't the plume that can be treated. It's dissolved, it's slushy, whatever you want to call it. It is in there, and it would take some maybe considerable effort. Is there any long-term prognosis, like 50 years, our lifetime, that we may not need to treat this?
I'd like to know what the winning lottery numbers, if I have that vision. Kidding aside.
Well, I was going to say, from the public standpoint, if
Right.
that's, we just want to be honest with them that this is a part of the future, probably permanent for the.
Yes, that's a great question, though, all the kidding aside. I think scientific community and regulatory communities are in it to answer that question. They are looking at different ways, but not currently nothing they are studying or researching are upscalable to the municipal level, but they are doing at lab level. They are trying to do different way of treating or mitigating the effect. So I think if you ask the same question 5 years from now, I think we may have a better answers because there are so many university research institutions. They are looking into the cost-effective way of managing this. So 50 years, very likely, when we are doing the flying cars and like a Jackson's. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just, there is nothing at this point that says that this is going to end anytime soon.
Correct, right. Yeah, I think that's a great conclusion. Yes, we can tell you about potential future possibilities, but we like to operate our operation in a very pragmatic way of looking at it because we cannot take a chance. We cannot work on speculation. We have to work with what we have.
Okay. Thank you. So let's get with our public. No, we're going to go to the public. We'll come back. So we got to. So we're going to go to the public. So we get the last say. Do we have cards, or are we going to just let them come up at when they want?
We have 2 people on Zoom to speak. The first one being Alan Burnham.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Burnham.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation. It addressed many of my comments. Of course, the full answer is really a matter of study over the next year or two when you do the reliability supports. So I understand that. I was less convinced that the statement that this is not a plume is correct. There are many kinds of plumes, including smoke plumes. Obviously, a TC plume would be different from gasoline. I guess the question is whether or not one considers a plume to be a body contamination that still has an active source. And I'm not quite sure if that's really an accepted definition. But I would draw your attention to MTBE, which was an additive to gasoline and very soluble in water. And that was basically the problem, is that unlike the gasoline, which kind of stayed relatively local, the MTBE moved along with the water. I think the analogy here, there was an excellent point that it's cheaper to treat it as much as you can when it's most concentrated. I think the analogy that I heard is that, well, from a cash flow perspective, we can't afford not to have water pumping out of the Bernal Basin. So maybe the analogy is like buying a house. It's maybe cheaper to buy a house with cash, but if you don't have the cash, you have to do it by a mortgage, and you end up paying more. But it's a cash flow issue. So you may want to think about that kind of terminology. Anyway, but I'm glad to see that here that it's not considered to be an absolute barrier, because I think that would be a foolhardy thing to claim. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnham. And we have someone else on Zoom, Donna?
Yes, Linda Kelly.
Go ahead, Linda. Or Ms. Kelly. I know her person. Can you hear us, Linda?
She's muted. Go ahead, Linda.
Yes.
I want to thank Mr. Min for the wonderful presentation that is done in semi-technical terms that are non-technical enough for a little old lady like me to be able to understand and to see what is going on and what wonderful staff work has gone on in Zone 7 in the last couple of years. I'd like to congratulate all of you for a presentation that has really buoyed my spirits as far as knowing that with Pleasanton collaborating now well with Zone 7, we stand a chance of not having drastic results from this PFAS that we've been living with all these years. I just want to say thank you, guys.
And thank you, Ms. Kelly. Are there any questions from the audience? So the presentation must have been excellent then. Otherwise, or they didn't understand it. But I'm going to go with they understood it. So then it comes back to us for questions. Director Palmer? Comments? You can. It's up to you.
Comment time. So I'm gonna. The one comment I was going to make is that you were mentioning about the Bernal subbasin having a lag time to be recharged from the Amador subbasin. Would part of that be due, perhaps, that the sense that the Bernal subbasin is also recharged by the Arroyo del Val, and so as stuff works its way down there, it gets recharged by that, not just by stuff moving underground.
Correct. That's absolutely good. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, we have different recharge sources.
Right.
So Del Valle is one of the sources as well.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to mention about data collection is that, as we all know, it takes a lot of staff time to be doing data collection and data, basically cooking it a little bit and figuring out what the heck it means and that kind of thing. And we're all suffering under the problems of having, limited staff time because we're not doing PhD theses here. We are trying to run water stuff. But one of the things that I was just going to point out that we've discussed in the water quality committee with Aqua, and that is the how nice it would be if the state made all their reporting uniform. And that way, the data that does get collected is much more easily collated and stuck together, and people could enter data, and it could go to multiple sources, and then people could start to, other people, maybe graduate students somewhere, somebody could grab hold of that data and make sense of it. So yeah, I'm just putting that out there because I know it's something that we've all been working on. You've been working on it, I'm sure, and it's just something that needs to be done, is making these data collection methodologies be more uniform right across the board. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you.
Director Figures?
I suspect that in the next couple of years, the board will be asked to comment on whether to start involving Stanford or Berkeley, some of those scholars, to really help us out. And we've done that before, and we have gotten really good data on it. Back with great knowledge for what it cost us. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Green. It's either one, you can go.
Okay. Just want to say again, thanks. Great presentation. It again gives me faith that our methods are methodical and thoughtful, and not just now, but in the future. We don't just rush ahead. We have a plan. We have lots of plans. So I'm looking forward to finding out the test well data. I think it might answer some questions, and the model updates and simulations that come from it. My hope, as I've mentioned before, is to see lots of runs that show a range. I like to see a range. It helps me, it helps the modelers, the simulation people understand what we're looking at. It also helps, again, you don't necessarily get exact numbers out of this, but it teaches you a lot when you do a range of runs on things. So I hope to see that. I'm also looking forward to getting some sources in that model eventually. So I'll be looking at what you guys are doing. So because as we've mentioned before, that would enhance the model quite a bit. Water is, we talked before about water as a major, there's lots everywhere, it is, but that doesn't mean throw your hands up in the air, we can't do anything about it. We're absolutely doing something about it here. Water is a major ingestion point, and since we're not in the Midwest where they're sort of belching out Gen X, which you can find in their rain, we're in a better situation here. That is absolutely where you concentrate your efforts, and so I think these efforts are well placed. So I just wanted to say thanks again, for the work that you've done, and look forward to seeing more. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Green.
Oh, and thank you also to the work you're going to do.
Go ahead, Director Naro.
Thank you. Well, so I was struck by the comment, that we all have PFAS probably up to here, which I think is probably correct. And I was more struck by the picture of the little child, I think, with drinking out of the hose or something, and that, this is as much about our next generation of kids, of giving them the clean water. And so I applaud the staff. I came in the middle of the work to treat the Stone Ridge Mall, and I was impressed that just cut to the chase and took advantage of the opportunity and moved some projects around to be able to fund it, and then turned around and got a grant so they could put the money back in the other projects. But I think it's important, it goes to our values, to continue to treat for PFAS on these wells, with the second well field coming online, the third well field in design, so that we are delivering clean, sustainable water to our customers, our retailers, who in turn can have confidence to their residents and their businesses that it's clean. And I just applaud that. And I think at the same time, and I hate to say it, but we're going to have to be mindful of what's the next emerging contaminant. Who knows? But it, I no doubt that in a few years something's coming, and I'm confident that our staff will react or, be proactive actually about how we're going to deal with whatever it might be while still continuing to get the PFAS out of our wells. And I think as we saw on the diversification information how important this groundwater is to our water supply during the drought time. And when there's no water in Lake Oroville, or we're getting, 5% allocation, which normally, that represents, 80% of our water. So it's just, I think, critical that we continue moving forward with this regional well project with Pleasanton and finding out, what we don't know, let's go find out. And, we may have to treat, but it's still another source of water in the event of drought, which we know is coming. So I applaud our staff for their proactiveness. I appreciate the regional board being here and helping discuss this and put some perspective on it. And, I think we just have to keep moving forward. I feel, after hearing this, really good about the path that Zone 7 and the regional board are on in trying to get our hands around this. So say thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments before I go? So,
Oh, wait a minute. Does anybody else down there have?
no.
No? I just wanted to thank the regional board and their teams and also our staff for all the work that they do continually to make sure that, we're starting now to pave the way for the future, and all of us are collectively part of that partnership. So we appreciate that. And also, maybe we can continue to fund science fair projects on the process so we can gain more kids to go into our world and help us solve these issues going forward. So thank you all.
Thank you. So one of the things I wanted to acknowledge is the part of the presentation that deals with investigating the feasibility of a regional project, basically with the city of Pleasanton, who has showed up here to hear this presentation, this important presentation. We have mutual interest, to be sure. And so I'm excited about working with possibilities that we're going to do something that saves each of our agencies cost as we go forward. And it looks like it's going to be a long process, because as you look at some of the factors for proportional cost, in particular anyway, you don't know what the production of a well is until you build it. And so that's not going to be this year, it's not going to be soon. But we are in the path to get there, so that's the main thing. And so thanks for coming, for sure. So the other thing that I just want to acknowledge again, it can't emphasize it enough, is how important our groundwater is. And all this that we're doing here, all the study, staff efforts, are to preserve the use of basically our biggest supply of emergency water. So it handles droughts, but it's also needed annually for peaking. So it's not just something that you can turn off at all. So, and then I guess I wanted to emphasize what I thought maybe were some of the high points that have happened, and that's the identifying the need to do the projects. And the first project was Stone Ridge, and that PFAS treatment at Stone Ridge was done in record time, and we practically got all our costs recovered through the state, and that's just unprecedented. And we're due early next year to have 3 of our wells from the chain of lakes completed, and we're well underway with planning for the Mocho well site, wellfield site treatment. And we know that we probably have to look at this as not just projects, but it's a program of treating groundwater that's going to go on indefinitely, pretty much. I guess that what I hope we've got a verification of, or we feel that we've confirmed with the public that we're all in sync. We've got working with the regional board, staff, our board here, and even the city of Pleasanton, and we have a representative from DSRSD who also gets the groundwater. So it's just good to see this coming together, and I think someone else has already asked the question. This information will be available on our website and on TV and to share with the public. And so thank you very, very much again for the presentations and answering the questions and all the hard work.
Anytime.
Unless there's something else, I think we can go home. Meeting adjourned.